We had on the program a year or so ago General Dan Bolger and then Lieutenant Colonel Noggle, the guy who John Noggle, who co-authored the counterinsurgency manual with General Petraeus. And Noggle was saying in that episode, the specific quote was that the U.S. fumbled these wars on the 1 yard line after that we carried the ball 99 yards and then fumbled on the 1 yard line, and that if we put in Afghanistan a presence of 50,000 troops or 35,000 troops and we're willing to keep them there in perpetuity, that you'd end up with a stable country and a stable democracy. What do you make of that sort of an analysis based on your experience?
I see it a bit differently. I mean, I see Afghanistan in much longer term viewpoint than that, and also the mission there has changed quite a bit. First, Afghanistan can potentially be a success, but it's in many ways how we define success. Are we going to have barracks, in 2009 and 10 throughout the whole country? No, we're not going to be able to do that. But is it possible for the United States to have a partner in that part of the world that's been historically plagued by violent extremism, regardless of its name, regardless if you call it Al-Qaeda, if you call it the Taliban, if you call it Haqqani? And if you're able to have a partner in there that's able to work with you in order to address those key transnational threats, then that's a very important thing to have. And so while COIN itself may not have been successful, if you look at the broader national security interests that we actually do have an opportunity there in order to work with this government to help build their security forces primarily, so that you're able to deal with these threats so they don't threaten the homeland again. And that's, in my mind, the important big picture that we have to remain focused on.
And we did have in the past year, there were setbacks. Taliban gained a lot of ground. There were some major defeats, but the Afghan military did not completely collapse, as the Iraqi military did at one point. Right. In similar. And so, I mean, is that the kind of moderate success that we should really be focused on?
The U.S. technically ended combat operations at the end of 2014. So now, legally, we're not doing combat operations. And so as a result, we've transitioned all of that over to the Afghans. Now, as a result, there have been massive shifts and transitions that have been going on, and there's been back and forth where the Taliban and the Afghan government has been really battling over some key terrain. But what's important to always remember is that while there have been some sort of losses, at least the Afghans have actually also been able to retake lost territory, as opposed to certain things that we've seen in Iraq, where Mosul fell, I believe, in June of 2014, and it's still under the control of ISIS or Daesh. That's not the case in Afghanistan, and that's an important distinction to have. When people say Afghanistan's going the way of Iraq, at least the Afghans are able to come back and fight and to be able to retake those important areas.
I would say one thing, having 10,000 troops there allows us to help them do that. I think if we didn't have those 10,000 troops, I'd be pretty suspicious about whether they'd be able to retake some of the lost territory, for example, in Kunduz, where they were able to fight back and take that territory, whether that would actually happen.
Yeah, if they didn't, Kunduz was an area in northern Afghanistan that fell under Taliban control for a few days in October of 2015. And then a few days later, it was retaken by the Afghans. And had that not happened, with our support, and we certainly helped them considerably, then you'd be in a much different strategic environment where you'd really see Afghanistan more on par with where Iraq is right now.